Welcome, everyone. I'm Paula Bartholomew, the Director of Online Events, and we're just delighted that you've turned into Hawthorn University's final All About Alumni of 2018. We've just had a brilliant year of Hawthorn University graduate presentations, and I sure hope that you'll visit our website and view their presentations too. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Wendy Turner-Larsen, and you'll have the opportunity to ask her questions directly too. So hello, Wendy, and welcome.
Thank you, Paula.
I'm really excited to be here together. And I'm looking forward to introducing you and have you share your postgrad experiences too. So Wendy is a graduate of Hawthorn's Master in Health and Nutrition Education program in 2013 graduation. As a psychologist, Wendy had a thriving practice in Canada, providing holistic approach to emotional, mental, and psychological health to her clients. She then discovered brain nutrition and the impressive results provided for her clients through this method. She now works as a leadership executive coach and corporate training consultant. She utilizes her holistic philosophy and including brain health and nutrition to help leaders and organizations become healthier, more robust, and thereby more productive and successful. All good things. Wendy earned her master's in counseling psychology, a master's in adult education leadership, and her MHNE. She's a registered nutritionist, a certified hypnotherapist. She's certified through Neuronutrient Training Institute and is a certified professional coach with credentialing through the International Coach Federation. And today, with brain health for leaders as her focus, Wendy will share about her multidisciplinary approach to assist leadership coaching clients and as well as organizations, how and why she became interested in nutrition and more specifically brain nutrition. She'll describe her own journey of health and how brain nutrition supported her own way to wellness. And Wendy says that her training at Hawthorn gave her the confidence and the credibility to speak and teach about nutrition and brain health. And her passion is to help organizations integrate health and wellness into business and leadership training, because personal wellness is foundational to leadership and organizational success. Wendy, that's a mouthful, and I'm really impressed with your accomplishments so far and really looking forward to hearing the story and how this unfolds. So are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's get started. And why don't you start with framing what you hope to share with us today?
Okay, thanks, Paula. I first of all want to say I'm very excited. I'm thrilled to be presenting in this manner to all of those that are online with us. And my hope is that there might be some ideas or there might be something that provides some support to those of you listening, and just something that might be a takeaway for you. So thanks for those of you that have joined today. So briefly framing what I want to share with you today, the leadership coaching holistic approach that I take, and how I got there, why I feel that that's important. Some of the training and credentials really required to be a leadership coach. And although I am a registered nutritionist, why I don't present myself as that first. The second piece to that, these really all tie together, and I really appreciate others who have shared on this format that, and maybe many of you listening today, that your own journey of health and wellness probably has really led you to the place of being interested or practicing in the area of health and wellness. So I'm going to share some about that, because that's really impacted the work that I do, how I work with my clients, and the information that I present to them. And then the third piece, again, these all fit together like a puzzle, that the mind nutrition piece and the importance of nutrition and Hawthorn training, which I think was really a very important piece. And I'll talk more just about credibility and, as you know, the myriad of information that the public gets flooded with, and that they're not sure who to trust. So that's part of why training is so important to me.
Beautiful, well said, Wendy. And while just looking at this slide, it's like 3 master's degrees, and including Hawthorn. So talk a little bit about this and why you pursued all three of these.
Yes, a lot of people ask me, well, why didn't you do one master's and then a PhD? And the reason being, I really want to emphasize with my clients just this holistic approach, and that psychology and our beliefs and neuroscience is gaining a lot of popularity today, and I do bring that into my work. So that's really where I started with my master's, and went into I actually worked in Montana in a psychiatric hospital after I had my first master's, and then did a master's in adult education focused on leadership. There weren't masters in organizational psychology. So I was really interested in bringing information about the brain and emotions, mental health and wellness into organizations that was really relevant and something that wasn't dismissed. And that was about 20 years ago. The third master's, of course, health and nutrition education at Hawthorn was really important to me in terms of the credibility that would provide me, and to the public. If I'm not credible or seen as credible, the public won't get the information that we have as nutritionists or coaches or counselors. So although it's three different master's degrees, they all again fit together like a puzzle. I think that's just kind of how I'm wired, and bringing together different disciplines that actually do overlap and intersect, which is my business name, and intersect in a way that provides value to my clients.
Well, I love it. I think the question that you get asked of why not just one master's and then a PhD, it sounds like that you really pursued education that suited you and your goals versus just going for a credential. Not that a PhD is not going to give you valuable information too, but you had specific educational resources and reasons for these masters that really suit you in your career. So let's move forward a little bit and have you give us an overview of your career to date.
So, well, thanks for those comments, Paula. I think that's true. It took me a long time to realize that nutrition and brain nutrition was such an important facet to overall health for people. It was just not something I was had been exposed to and was pleasantly surprised. Mm-hmm. So worked as a registered psychologist and had a private practice in Saskatchewan, Canada. So those of you that are listening, that's above Montana, and it is cold here in the winter. Mm-hmm. And we're having mild weather. It's only like 8 below. So I had finished my training in the U.S. and moved back here and worked for an organization, and then went out on my own. A really important facet in terms of my own journey and then helping my clients was discovering the amino acid therapy, and that's what I refer to as brain nutrition. Of course, brain nutrition has a lot of other pieces to it, but I believe the foundation is the amino acids. And so that was something that I transitioned into about 13 years ago, and learned about that and started to bring that into my private practice, with clients, and was very excited with the results. And then 5 years ago, finished my training at Hawthorn. Had actually the year before left the College of Psychologists that I was a part of because of their disbelief and challenges about using brain nutrition as a psychologist. So I resigned and knew that, and had been planning, that being part of the College of Psychologists probably wasn't going to continue. And so studied at Hawthorn and then became a registered nutritionist. In that time frame as well, took some hypnotherapy training. I had thought that I would refer people to hypnotherapists, but I really noticed from my own experience in receiving hypnotherapy just how quickly I could shift beliefs, etc. So took that training and wanted to provide that to my clients. During that time, so one didn't and the others start. I took leadership coaching several years ago. So I had a private practice as a psychologist, and I had already been providing corporate training and took leadership coaching. I was asked by some organizations to provide leadership coaching. So took that training and overlapped. I think it's about 15 years I've been providing leadership coaching, probably 20, 25 years providing training and consulting to organizations on a wide variety of things. And as a leadership coach, as Paula and I were discussing prior to our call today, that the coaching field is really much more progressive and open to a wide variety of modalities. And so I can still bring in my background in psychology, the brain nutrition for leaders, and I can also use hypnotherapy. So that brings me up to date, and I think I'll share a little bit more about that in a future slide.
Okay, good. I wanted to come back, the amino acid therapy. I'm wondering if you studied with Julia Ross or where you got introduced to amino acids for brain health.
Yes, that was with Julia Ross. I purchased her book, The Mood Cure, and got interested in it, applied it to myself, and then started to use that with my clients. And then Julia created training. I was in contact with her, and she created training. I think I was the first student to go through her online program. So yes, that's where I got that training.
It's some kind of prize you get for being the first student in Julia Ross's training.
The prize was it wasn't as organized as it is now.
Right, that's right. It's true.
Yeah,
these things evolve.
Yes.
Perhaps you help her with that too. Well, I also want to acknowledge being in the conventional world around psych and mental health and well-being is that you faced some resistance around using brain nutrition, where using psych medications would have just been completely reasonable, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. So that was a bit of a tumultuous ride for a while, and I think actually led me to a much better path. My work being under the umbrella of leadership, executive coaching, and health coaching. I put myself forward as a health coach as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I see your next slide is here, and it seems so many of us in this profession come to it because of personal or family health concerns and seeking more healthful solutions. So let's have you talk about your personal journey with health and wellness here.
Yes, it's been quite a journey, and actually always kind of evolving. And when I was in high school, I contacted mono, so I had the Epstein-Barr virus. And from that point forward, my fatigue and energy levels were probably the most impactful and disabling issues for me. I continued on to school. I worked, but as I got older, I really needed to manage my time much better, rest a lot. And when I got married, so my husband had 3 sons. So when I got married, I also had 3 stepsons. One was old enough that he didn't live with us, and it was at that point that my health really declined. And I had a private practice as a counselor, psychologist, and I found myself being able to work about 3 days a week and needed to rest most of the other time. And as many of you know, one of the interesting facets of chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, as in my case, they were related, was that I didn't look ill when I was out with people. I looked fine. So I really kind of struggled with, am I lazy, or is there something really, medically going on? Doctors' tests, of course, showed that I was fine. One of the other facets of that was a low-grade depression. What we refer to when we work with amino acids is kind of a blah depression. I wasn't really sad, but along with that, quite a bit of anxiety that I hadn't actually recognized. And so there was a lot of trying trying to function well with many of these issues. So I would say I was high functioning, but my health was taking a toll, and it was really gradual through the years. And then insomnia became, a piece of that, waking up multiple times. Weight issues that I had my entire life since, being a young teenager. So just kind of struggled through those things. My first introduction to alternative health was really through, adrenal fatigue and finding some supplements that, like Cerephos, that could help me sleep for the very first time. So that all led to, coming across, I was working with a holistic nutritionist. I didn't really know they existed. I didn't know what she was. And she said to me, I've kind of done everything I can with you. You're doing all of it. I've read this book, The Mood Cure. Why don't you, take a look at that? And so although my health had improved, it still had a long way to go. And so that information about the amino acid therapy was really kind of another puzzle piece at the right time that really created breakthrough in my own health and wellness. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I want to acknowledge what a challenge it can be to have a health concern that doesn't have obvious physical manifestations, any of our mental concerns, depression, anxiety, but also pain, inflammation, gut health. It just doesn't show. I mean, we're in a wheelchair, you got an arm in the sling, you got a bandage on your head, something. It's like it garners sympathy and compassion right away. It's like, oh, something's wrong. And if we can't see it in this culture, it seems like it's not acknowledged as easily and as well, and often just suggested that there may not be something wrong with you. It might all be in your head, right? So here we are with you in this profession of somebody saying, gosh, it might just be all in your head. And I love it where you're going in your career of personal health and wellness and professional and organizational health and wellness through brain nutrition as a big inclusion to what you're doing. So,
right, yeah, like such a good point. And even as it's not really validated in our in their communities, etc., I didn't really validate it. I would question myself. I'm just lazy, etc. Everyone else looks to seem normal. Am I the only one? And one of the pieces that I didn't share was my mom. When I was in my 20s, my mom had a number of probably similar issues, and she sought out alternative health. And so 30 years ago, there was books and magazines, alternative health around our house. So I think that really helped lay a good foundation that there's other places to look, which I'm, really, really grateful for.
Beautiful. Well, on this health track here, why don't we talk about how your personal health journey impacted your career as well as your career choices?
Well, when working as a psychologist, when I discovered amino acids for brain health and the incredible relief that I got, I was so excited to start to share that with my clients, and started to see the incredible impact. I think one of my ways of just being in this world in terms of work and personal life is whatever I learn personally or professionally. I really excited to share that with my clients, and I have had a platform for that for 20 years, working as a counselor, gradually adding on workshops, gradually adding on coaching. And since I started in mental health, people are hungry for something alternative. So it was easy that what I learned along the way that helped me, it was really easy and actually fun to begin to share that with my clients and see the impact. And there was a time that all these pieces seemed like puzzle pieces sitting loosely on my desk. I didn't really know how they would fit. And it's probably only been recently that it's come together more for me. Because there was a long time I wasn't sure, do I put myself out as a life coach? as a nutritionist, hypnotherapist. What am I? And so it took, a fair bit of time and reflection and talking out loud about, what am I? And, that's why I've come to, I'm an executive leadership health coach and provide all these pieces through my coaching. So it's an exciting, place to be. I talked about my master's degrees, the executive coach training that I took. I was very fortunate that I was doing some corporate training, would be around the area of emotional intelligence and self-awareness and how that impacts leadership, etc. And coaching, that was about 15 years ago. Coaching was just becoming popular. Mm-hmm. And one of the executive VPs asked me if I would coach her team. So I was really fortunate that I got asked to do that, and then I could take the training and, begin to provide services in that area. And then the NNTI is the Neuronutrient Training Institute with Julia Ross, and I completed that training in 2010, and was providing nutrition, brain health training to some clients, leadership coaching to others. Maybe kind of felt disjointed, and at that time I was still providing counseling. So as I say, it's only been the last few years that all these pieces have started to really come together and make sense. And then the Master of Science through Hawthorn, receiving the graduation, the certification for that, and the degree in that in 2013. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that's been really impactful. And hypnotherapy training, as I said. So as you look at this list, it's not that a client comes in and I make them do all of these pieces. I really try to listen to, what's important to them and what I think will be most impactful to move them forward quickly.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. As having very eclectic credentialed background myself, I can see what my goal was and what my interest was and how it came together. I think similarly to you, it just started to, you followed your interest, you followed what mattered to you, and now you're being able to see it all come together and fitting just so seamlessly, it seems, but just the way you're describing it, I can see it from the beginning. It's when we have perspective, it's like, oh, you're on such a good path, Wendy. You're going to really be able to make such a significant difference in your communities and the people that you work with. So,
yeah, good point. When you're in it, you don't necessarily see the big picture. You just are taking the next step and the next step. So, yeah, good reflection.
And for you're the one that brought up the reflection of really asking yourself important questions. What am I? You gave yourself time to reflect and the space to do it, and that's just so important rather than being fixated on having to be in a certain place and a certain income level, etc. Yeah. Anyway, all right, here you are at Hawthorn. I see your slide here. We're up at Hawthorn now. So how did that play a role in your career objectives?
Yeah, I like that. Here I am at Hawthorn. Mm-hmm. I see more and more the importance of that training and having, a Master of Science in health and nutrition, and other training programs that I looked at maybe had similar curriculum, similar program objectives and goals. But one of the pieces that I liked about Hawthorn is that I would receive a Master of Science. And in Canada, we don't call a lot of degrees, Master of Science. So my purpose in that was, of course, for deeper learning, but for credibility. And I hear more and more, especially in areas like psychology and nutrition, that there's so many people offering information and advice in those areas that really don't have the educational background. And so, people get inundated by that. So I felt like my education would add credibility and trust so that I could really present nutrition and the connection to leadership competencies. And secondly, if I have a Master of Science in Nutrition, I think people are going to listen more carefully when I talk about the amino acid therapy, because it's not something that many practitioners or health workers, etc., are aware of. And people would say to me, if this works so well, why haven't I heard of it? And so that was really my thinking behind getting a Master of Science with Hawthorn. It was an online program. There was space and time to finish it and still work, and then could become a registered. Hawthorn is recognized by the International Organization of Nutritional Consultants, which interestingly enough is in Ontario, Canada.
That's
and
right.
So then I could become a registered nutritionist. So that is how Hawthorn is playing into my career objectives. And of course, as the public, and I'm finding organizations, some more progressive leaders and organizations are really interested in nutrition. And so, because I've done other work there, I already have a platform, and I'm invited in to, have discussions around nutrition and brain health.
Beautiful, and I really appreciate your standard here too, because you talk about people that don't really have background in training. I mean, you could have just read the mood here and said, okay, now I'm qualified to do brain nutrition, but no, you went on and you did the full training, and yes, and then coupling that with your education at Hawthorn in nutrition certainly deepened your understanding and appreciation of what you needed to know to do what you're doing now.
Right, true. I never really thought of it that way. I guess maybe the age I am and the commitment to education was always a standard for me. That probably contributed to that decision.
Yeah, well said. So research, yes, you got to do research all the way through your program, your MHNE at Hawthorn, but it culminated in your thesis. So I was always very curious. I followed you when you were doing your thesis and the work that you were submitting. So let's talk about that a little bit.
So as much as a research study and thesis is, requires a fair bit of work, I was really excited to do my thesis on neuronutrient counseling with 10 women to look at two things. It was really about mitigating overstress symptoms, and I've listed a few there, but I also wanted to have them self-report on what they noticed happened to them in the workplace, so the workplace competencies. So it was the foundation of this was to really show that, when people feel better, their health is better, that it does, greatly impact their work. And so you can read that on the slide, the different symptoms that I assessed. And so this was a self-assessment. They would rate their symptom a 0 to 10, and at each of the sessions, and then by the time that we were done. So it was a self-assessment, and then they rated their workplace competencies once before they started the neuronutrient counseling, and then following the neuronutrient counseling. And so just briefly, the results for the symptoms like overstress and anxiety and depression improved on average of 43 to 78%. And I had to, because I wanted to get my thesis in, I was actually not finished with some of them, and so we just used the results that they had come to by the time I finished my thesis. And in some cases, the symptoms were fully resolved. So overstress, depression, anxiety. So this was 10 women. And then there were only 5 that did the work, reported on the workplace competencies. And so that's what I was really thrilled about, that this research study, although small, really proved what I believed and what I had noticed in several years. I had probably been using neuronutrient therapy about 8 years by the time I studied at Hawthorn. So productivity improved, engagement, like, motivation, excited to be at work, relationship building. So, these are key pieces that organizations want to assess. And, they pay a lot of money on conflict management, relationship building, emotional self-management, emotional IQ, etc. So that's why I was very excited about the research study, and I have that data and do share it when I'm working with organizations.
That's a beautiful thing about, doing a thesis. You can get it published. You can do so much, validate the work that you're doing. And you talk about the women that were in the study and their subjective responses versus objective. I mean, you weren't doing testing, you weren't doing blood testing or any kind of labs on this. You were reaching to them. And what I noticed is also the personalities of an individual. I've worked with people and I get questionnaires, and I might have a client that's dealing with 4 clients that are dealing with exact the same thing, and they get the same questionnaire and they fill it out, and somebody might be really downplaying their symptoms and their results, and somebody might really exaggerate it some. Have you seen this? Where somebody might have a pain level that just seems out the roof, but they'll mark it as moderate or mild. It's like, no, I just don't want to call attention to myself here. But when you're dealing with research and results in a study like that, it's just curious to me as a professional how you qualify and quantify their subjective responses.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that I have a good answer for it, but those of us who have been trained, with the Neuronutrient Training Institute, notice that most people underrate. And we've also noticed that men tend to underrate more on the symptoms of low serotonin, low endorphins, low GABA, etc. What we've also noticed, and I've noticed this a lot, as they move forward, they will change their original scores. So, for example, myself, I didn't realize I was living with a lot of anxiety until I had relief from it. And I maybe would have given myself a 3 out of 10, 10 being very high. And once I got relief, I probably would have changed, that original score. So I don't know if that's exactly answering what you're asking, but it's interesting.
It is.
When people struggle with ill health for a long time, I think to manage it, they do underrate.
Yeah, it becomes our norm.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Let's move this forward here into your business focus and why you chose to work with leaders in organizations.
So there's 2 main reasons. One reason is I think that leaders impact organizations, immensely. And I have always had this interest in leadership development and psychology. So I think it really hits the mark for me and my interests. And I think, what we're interested in, we're usually good at. So I think it's something that I'm good at. And with my psychology background, a lot of leaders that might not pursue looking at psychology are much more comfortable looking at mindset and limiting beliefs, emotions, etc., under the umbrella of coaching. So it's just a fun area for me. I'm really interested in it. And I see the impact when leaders get healthier, what happens in organizations because, bosses, leaders just have so much influence. Secondly, it's a very conscious business decision, and that organizations spend money on leaders and leadership development, and they'll spend money on employee development. They won't spend that much money outside of their benefits plan on health and wellness and nutrition or even, psychological support. So I knew that if my business was going to be sustainable for the long term, that I wanted to really bring it under the umbrella of leadership and business development.
I like the piece where you're going here, but also you're going right to the top. And when you make an impression on the leaders of an organization, they will have influence on those that they're leading, and hopefully see the value of an improved health force overall.
Right, and they're the decision makers.
Yeah.
They're the ones who can say, so I have some organizations looking at in their benefits plan, instead of a dietitian who follow the Canada Food Guide in Canada, and it's very different than the holistic nutrition. So they're rethinking that and asking their insurance companies to cover registered nutritionists. So I don't see all of that happening very quickly, but because I've been able to make inroads with leaders, that those are changes that could be forthcoming and greatly impact the health of their employees.
I'm almost speechless here. Words are tumbling out. That they are influencing what coverage that they can have in their benefits plan is enormous. Mm-hmm. It's just enormous to bring in a holistic nutritionist versus an RD on that. Mm-hmm. Well, we all face some challenges along the way, and I see you've got a slide saying that you might have some too. What have you experiencing here? What are you coming up against?
Probably the biggest one is people, the last one, the limited understanding of an experience with the immensely positive results with neuronutrient coaching or counseling. People's eyes glaze over, and so I've really had to step back at times and think about, okay, I need to bring this where people are open. And so I've spent enormous amount of time and energy talking about it, and it hasn't landed on fertile ground, like people that really want to hear this. It took a long time for that to gain traction and be seen as something credible in my work. And then there's the money, insurance coverage for pharmaceuticals, insurance coverage for dietitians, not registered holistic health practitioners or nutritionists, immense support for leadership development, as I said, which is one of the reasons I have focused on this. And I have the background and skills to do that. That may not be everybody's, avenue into organizations. So I know that funds are available to pay for coaching and training, and so I bring this under that umbrella, as I've talked about. As a registered nutritionist, I do come across from time to time organizations that have benefits packages, insurance coverage that covers a registered nutritionist. And some of our bigger government organizations may have extended health benefits that will cover, nutritional coaching. So it's moving forward. Mm-hmm. And then people who don't have any science background that dispute claims. And so really just managing my own mental health and wellness around that, learning to, let some of that go, not get involved in every conversation, not try to change everybody's mind. So that's come over the years.
All right, thank you. Putting all this together, we'll talk about your future plans in just a minute. But before we get there, I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about your success that you're having and how that translates into money. If you can share just a little bit of how you bill, and are you being successful and more successful than only doing one-on-one? Are you? Mm-hmm. Help me there a little bit.
Well, so really good point, and about the one-on-one. So through coach training, and we continue to have to get continuing education units, just like with, nutrition. They really talk about business development, that one-on-one may not be everybody's skill set, and it may not be sustainable for business. So I do provide one-on-one coaching, leadership and health coaching. I do provide small group coaching, and I've created some programs around my personal excellence program, and provide some consulting, not that much, but training and workshops. Mm-hmm. And so participants in workshops then may come to a small group session, and they may become a one-on-one client. One-on-one clients might come to, a workshop. So they kind of feed each other. And when, there's been periods of times I haven't had many one-on-one coaching clients and it's sort of dipped, I still have my small groups or some workshops that I'm doing. And because I have taken the focus on working with corporations and organizations through leadership development, the organizations are paying me, not the individuals. So there is funds for that, and that is continually improving. It was a struggle probably about 4 years ago. I think I had 2 months I had no clients and no work, and had things moving along, but they hadn't really gained traction yet. So so that's my focus.
Right. It takes time.
It takes time. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that and your honesty around it also. And it's a reality for all of us. So let's have you close up with what your future focus is. Where are you going?
So continue really with everything that I've already talked about. I've scaled down some of the workshops that I do. I used to do stress management and emotional intelligence and communication, etc. And so I've scaled down to one program that I created, my personal excellence program, and taking that forward into organizations. And we fortunately here have a government grant that's helping support some training initiatives. So I'm able to get quite a bit of work with some nonprofits with that personal excellence program, which really is about health, wellness, mental health, and how that impacts the individual in the workplace. So again, I'm adapting, and because I have some colleagues that do training, etc., I've been able to hire them to do some work that I used to do. So I'm earlier in our conversation, you talked about adapting, and I'm thinking that that's really key, adapting to what the market wants, and maybe adapting the way in which you market, the way in which you approach your work, etc. So that's something, because I had my private practice 20 years ago, I've had to continually adapt.
Beautiful. This has been a wonderful share and really enlightening, and I'm excited for the difference that you're making in the world of corporate and personal wellness, and especially around mental health. So thank you so much for sharing this, Wendy. It's really been a pleasure, and I hope you'll visit us again and continue to share your good works.
Thank you, Paula.
All right. I have just a few closing thoughts, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Please help spread the word for our next All About Alumni, and we'll meet here again on Wednesday, January 2nd at noon, live with Victor Corsetto. He's a graduate from the Wise Traditions program here at Hawthorn. And this being the last All About Alumni of 2018, I'd like to acknowledge this time of holy days and being able to honor and celebrations with and share with our loved ones. This can be a significant time of introspection, a time to reflect on the year passing, our accomplishments, our goals. There's just so much to be grateful for. And so I'd like to say that I'm grateful for the opportunity of bringing enlightened information and resources to you via our webinars. I'm really grateful to all of Hawthorn University's faculty and students and alumni who work so diligently so that you can make a positive difference in our communities. And I'm always grateful for James Bernardinelli, who engineers these webinars and who is always on the look to help students in all of Hawthorn. And finally, I'd like to extend my best wishes to you for a wonderful and nourishing holiday season. May there be peace on earth and in each of our hearts. So I wish you a gentle, delicious holidays. Enjoy it all, everybody. Take good care.